يكيا يخستيني لتكت يوهان يا إتكخو كإختديخ أختو يكيا قنيا أخساي Tléixʼ أختو السكو يا أختاتا يا يسكو كي تلوي هاد ها إنيتي كنشي يا يدو ساق روز تليت خاخينخ هو أوي وتوت أقاها كيتلي أوي يدت تليق أوي دو كتاكو قنشيش يدخو هاد هان
شتوي خدوسا كيش يكيتي أخواق
الشيش
ḥák'w hút uhu yw chadwysach wa pagan ka ʼéidáx Ḥák'w dike an kawdujixít Lingi ʼéidáx ḥák'w ach ʼéidáx because I'm translating from Greek and Hebrew into Lingi. And this is what I did with Luke chapter 1, verse 38. Ḥák'w guch an kawdujixít ye agati ye yikai yach. And that is supposed to say, here I am, servant of the Lord, let it be as you have said. Please correct my Lingi.
Oh, okay. I can take a look at that later. Okay. Sheesh. Do satsa?
Na where you chadwysach hell siad de hen ká'w sacú gdichja at challa acht yad at scu chatsiti dach.
Okay. Sheesh.
Kúkú chadwysach cad canuk ach sai Dak Shanak taku dak chilkat tak an ku yet nakatati ganach tede ayakat kochet dakakish dak kagwantan het siech achtu na yeah het siech achtu sagu yagi dat ge saganen huj
Juan.
You could turn your camera on or whatever.
Do satsa, you did.
Yedillatsin you chadwysach cha aadé chatnau chatyanik yachana ach dat shank chat usinik we daycare nik ach jiwu tléixʼ ushko atuadach chas ach tuasigu yi sakwa achi yachana. So douche tléixʼ ach tua ushko Tléixʼ.
Okay. Good sheesh. Atachte she I would nechi. Die dat
Jacques, Ḥák'w, Oudgaan, Ixsichen.
Okay. Goodness cheese. Okay, away. I do some.
Eriched. Kasha Said Lake Ḥák'w Frankatasi Khadu Sauk. Dech Yatki Akjiwu Aksi Yudu Sauk Shawat Lane Ka Yeet Yudu Sauk Duktut Dech Cake Tse Akjiwitse Awe Kucha.
Jeez. I do that.
Kachtzin achsayi yet achlakain ka yetki to kaste to
Okay. And cheese. Ach tu je okay. Haye achi.
Ḥák'w Juan je Ḥák'w Ḥák'w. Je Ḥána we ja yakki Keishan Gitta on Wudu Kuch Ach Cook Kachat Khatin we kanat tak yana shikh ya satuk.
Okay, goodness cheese.
Good cheese.
Yeah, well, has your set. Do
How
that.
Johan Nila Torah Yak the Nakasai Yasandik Yak daat Yechat Yati Kwashki Kwan Anika Kayayagi Ḳák'w Sitokinit Wutu Kuch Agawe Tuk Autu Zitich. Goodness cheese.
Okay, goodness cheese. Sit ya go away, ich the day, yak that. You go away, one. Yak echa sit up. I do that to you, huh?
Tléixʼ Ḥák'w ach twasigu we Shaadaaxʼ kakagudi awe you cannot naka init
Okay. Cheese, yak echa away.
Yaduhat Yak Sitini Singakrenach Kashuk Kawadai Yuchatu Asag Blakach Enach Scott Burton Yuchatu Asag Yak Sitini Gunath Chish Aktuusagu Akach Kadil Sekt at
Yak
Gunath Chish.
cheese. I do that with yech. Kuni nachsa, leinach, dachnach.
That's Tléixʼ you Ḥák'w Ḥák'w ak ik shugu yanaskuk klein chaklu yakyati Hillsborough Schools, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
My baby brother.
No, kalneek niki. Okay. Tatusa uyach.
Elias ʻéidáx Gushuk ich achjiwel.
Oh, okay. Ah, kalneek niki. So okay.
Yana ʻéidáx shkunde Tléixʼ Barbara sushi tuasigu chaan sashimi kawasabi Tléixʼ tuasigu.
Oh, what's that? Konachoi okay wujin tsati.
No.
Okay. Gada wait the khwa. Wa H shukwa. You first. Okay. Atisatsa kalneek.
Gat. Ja. Showtank, ʻéidáx tagwide na chatsati kich aya uhan. Tatgesu tutat achdormi suyenyen akachwaha suyenyedu achosak. Roach.
Kalneek niki. Ekecha. Atusa uyach.
Satukaya Seattle Yehat Yati Ishan Hat Achsi Sent Southplain Ace Clay spoiled
Oh, Ishan.
Ishan
Was atle dana wuna. Ishan yo.
Huchan.
Ah. Yake kalneek plain. Yake satini. Atusa uyach.
Cosine, ʻéidáx Tléixʼ Jackie Peda. Sukaari na Nahaksati Kagwantanyari Wushkitan Datan Chilkut Kwan Kusjin you do a sock akla I was trying to figure out how to say nursing home at Hidi. Kla is in the Kla is in nursing home.
Okay. Kwash. Shaadaaxʼ hiti.
Shaadaaxʼ hiti.
Okay, kalneek shuhan. Sukke.
Ish Katyahan Kachenach Sai Ka Shangakiri na Khetiti Dach Achani Chilpat Dach Achani and Gundach Achliuk Ut Dasaya Achish the army Chega Ka Kusti Wankanins Shunasaye Tuch walk Steganin walking down the line. One of them had a Tuch walk, a black eye from hacky sack, and they got in trouble for fighting, but no one actually was fighting.
Gosh, did Tléixʼ Gaeilge.
You say Tléixʼ again?
Did Tléixʼ Gaeilge. A little kicking bag.
Little kicking.
Goodness cheese. I do satsu? Tsukke?
Yeah. De Yagi Yejihane Achawa Kwe Ḳák'w Plus Plus at Yaki Yejihane empty classroom. Ḳák'w scheduling, yeah, junk stuff, messes. Anyway, Ḳák'w yeah, Yaki. Ooch. Goodness, geez. Quarti.
Huchaka? Tsukke?
I'd like to ask you a question once.
Oh.
Can do that.
We shkalnikach to asagu tse akayek wati. Ya idat ay achtu asagu e kak shkalnik ki data we. Yukakachtu laat chatling get inach. Shaadaaxʼ awe yidu asak. Wishkalnik tsati yi. Kachanach awish kugun. Aadé yuchadul atgiye lingit inach. De Ţák'w Connachwe saku daat. Ka hastu shagun. Ya Ḳák'w di awetsu. Ḳák'w dichwusati insu awe. Ḳák'w inye jichwaneyen. Wan qanins du yuchatangi tin. Du kak klein awe chwa ach Shaadaaxʼ. Ye awe wish kalneek. Hashuka yidu asak we kuk. Akachaya hasakaushikit. Ḳák'w Ḳák'w Wasak adénaya chwatu. We kuk. Kleidihina we kwanlin adachawe watu waqu khaka akhunki. De shitan khaswasatiyin. Ya hastu inaya kenach watu wishkalnik. Ya achtu yik hadjoy uhansu chuwayat de katashil kohasani kachawe atwatu kuchu. Hachaka kachawe adatu tukhwatank. Dat yachsawe uti hastu kusti hastu yejani. Adeawe adeskunukuya. Just ayego ginki awa to saku daat. Achtu keiqa kadena data ye has junein. Ya keichne kahoinak. Haji yesaway ye has junein. Ya atlen kuut in. Wega, gosh 1970, we konea yawe yan wat in ye has junein. Jagut klingitani hasawaskun. Jagu Ḳák'w. Yewe hasakawa ak. Ya klingit kina hasakaw shakit katlet kina kakadunigi yewe hasakaw shakit tse. Ajoy achtawasagu yakhana. Duch eid aya hutusa ach. Ya Shaadaaxʼ. Aadé awe atlakye. Aadé atlakye. Ya du dishkalnigi. Hadu yukatangi.
Yoha ane ayo Yoha ane Ḥák'w ayo to wasak Tléixʼ nach basket be ayo ayo asha to khustin yutatk Ḥák'w yahayo yate yutatk ya yande yak aslenin ayo Tléixʼ akha ayo kawdujixít yukhis ayo Khonakayan daat ya antayite Tléixʼ kalneek ayo anna atch ya antayite ya tutzkuwo ihayak ya Ḥák'w ashakanach anahayo yu aya atk ya antayite Tléixʼ auto wachut aken asayo ayo Tléixʼ Tléixʼ anahaya ya aka atchin yo antayite Tléixʼ hajiena tijadek dulkanch akaya shatukhust ya tsa ya antayik sakhatyede ataya atuta haja diye aya ya khis satinne ko aya tokastich kenahayo yo iqian ohanj kenahayo yo hitkak akanokch dak ako awewe Ḥák'w shaki nuski awe aya khanu Ḥák'w shaki dakun awe chkewe wushke ya khan chute iqtahyawunate nitinawe ke ata ikch te iqtahyawata chute yu hitkat aqet wasqatutinen iqtahyawata ye ayo hastukh ya kahich chute ya huche ayijaya an ya wusnahaya ye ya taqich te iqtahyawata akhankaya ya khajaqate ya ashekachuk nahaya kinde shatukhut ya tsayuwo anahaya tu kakatus Ḥák'w ya satkiyo haye uwaya ya shanatke ya hayo natij ate ya satkiye chutkhekh shate ya hayo yanik ya haye Ḥák'w ye chitonenoch ya khajaqate tak chuthayande ya yendus ninitinawe kundakhelchawe Ḥák'w kinde yutzet khatawe khashuko khaqekto aya awachawe Tléixʼ Ḥák'w ya atkhasnakok chute aya anaknish uat ya khajaqate yan khate yak atenen nawetsa yan khate yak atenen aqa awar ya khaya khana khawe ya kun Ḥák'w ya yinakhawe kinde anaskuknoch ya khajaqate aya ye aya chute chasiako khada kuchinoch ye aya yakshutan ya kalneek ye aya to Ḥák'w atat يا ḳák'w aadé aadé sitiye aadé aadé sitiye nalle dichaagoya dichaago aadé aadé taago achaado tlisaago ḳák'wede shugunach aadé yaad kawdujixít ya linget siyetehene ayesh kalneek ya ikkinachaya hatau sitak ya ikki aya siyetehene a stakhinik nach yau sitak stakhinik nach ya ach ishas hast du taknut ya stakhin yiknach ya hasustaqe Tléixʼ ayo ak yahin sit tayidenata ak ayaw ututlitzit ya khanat akak ayaye hasutuwa uyasha naqsan awastiyo atawasak taquwasik yasha naqsan hasaya shuko nakhya sit tayideta hasutuwa ko atayi nakhas qatlasha wahe nakhate kesat kawashe ya sit tayi nakhasu tlashi aya atat shukawkikho akakaya khanat evdutsin akate awa at atayi nakhaya ya sit tayi nakhaya qawshihash ya ikhte Sushiyetehene aqo aya kawdujixít ya sit tayide wusash ajaya akhat awa at ya sit khat awa at aya jilkhat nakhiq wa at ya akh ishas khunqe ya taqlawete jilkhat akhasusite ya sit khat awo ate aya akhaksa aya sit ka'a
Lletsa. Tléixʼ do you qatangi?
Like Google.
Sean, shut.
Just Google Docs.
Tukagachtu aq. Yakaga?
Ah.
Ḥák'w de ke.
Hey, do hey.
Yoha ane ayo Yoha ane Ḥák'w ayo to wasak Tléixʼ nakhoa basket be ayo ayo asha to khushtin yutatk Ḥák'w yakhayo yate yutatk ya yanda yak aslenin ayo Tléixʼ akha ayo kawdujixít yuqhis ayo qunakhayan utaj ya antayide Tléixʼ kakane Ḥák'w ayo anna atch ya antayide ya tutzquwo ihayak ya Ḥák'w ashakanach anahayo yu aya atk ya antayide Tseitayo auto wahot aten asayo ayo tseitkhututiyakh anahaya ya aqa atchin yo antayide Tléixʼ qhachiyena tichadek tulkanch Ḳák'w shatukhusht ya tsa ya antayik. Shakhatye de ataya atuta haja diye. Ya qis satin ko aya toqastich. Kena khayoyu iqiyan ohanj. Kena khayoyu hit khak aqanokch. Dakh aqo awewe kakak shaki nuski awe aya khanuk kakak shaki. Dakun awe chkawe wushke ya khan. Chute iqtakhiyawunate nitinawe ke ata ikch. Te iqtakhiyawata. Chute yu hit kat aqet wasqatutinen iqtakhiyawata. Ye ayo hastukh ya kakhicht. Chute ya huche ayijaya an ya wush nakhaya ye ya taqich. Te iqtakhiyawata. Ḳák'w ya khajaqate. Ya ashekachuk nakhaya kinde shatukhut ya tsayuwo. Anakhaya tu ukhs. Taqatus ah. Taqunakhayu ya satkiyo haye. Uwaya ya shanatlikaya khayu natich aadé ya satkiye. Chutleqtu shataya khaya yu yanik. Ya haye. Chuthe taqunakhayu ye chitunenoch. Ya khajaqate tak. Chuthayande ya yendus ninitinawe kundakilchawe. Ḳák'w kinde yutzet katawe khasukuk. Kakikto aya. Awachawe teil Ḳák'w ya apkhasanakuk. Chute aya anaknish uat ya khajaqate. Yan khateyak atenen nawetsa. Yan khateyak atenen aqa awar ya khaya khanakhawe. Ya gunqaqo ya yinakhawe kinde anaskuknuch. Ya khajaqate. Aya ye aya chute chasyaqa khadak tukhchinuch. Ye aya yakshutan. Yash kalneek. Ye aya tu Ţák'w daat ya Ḳák'w aadé haadix sitiye. Aadé haadix sitiye. Nahle de Ţák'w ya de Ţák'w. Aadé hadu Ṭhák'w achadu Tléixʼ Ḳák'w Shugunach aadé yat kawde ya yiye. Ya singet. Shiyete henne ayesh kalneek ya ikhi nakhaya. Hataw sitak. Ya ikhi. Aya shiyete henne Stakhidik nakhyaw sitak. Stakhidik nakh. Ya akhish hastu taknuch. Ya stakhin yiknakh. Ya hasustaqe. Tléixʼ ye ayo ak. Ya hin sit tayi denata. Ak ayaw ututlitzit ya khanat. Ҟák'w ye hasutuwa uyasha naqsan. Awastiyo atawasak taqwasik. Yasha naqsan. Hasaya shuko nakhya sit tayi detak hasutuwa kuk. Atayi nakhas qatlasha wahe nakhate kesat kawashe. Ya sit tayi nakhasu tlashi aya atat shukawkikhuh. Ҟák'w ya khanat evdutsin. Akhate awa at. Atayinachaya ya siktayinachaya kusehash. Ya ichte. Sushiyatehene akoaya kawdujixít. Ya siktayite usash. Ajaya akat awa at. Ya sitkat awa at. Aya jilkat nachyek uwa at ya ach ishas khunke. Ya taklawete. Jilkat achas usite. Ya sitkat awa ate aya akaksa aya. Sitka. Yukoto wasag. Ya jilkat nachyek uwa ate. Ya uhan. Ya deshitan khasatiye. Chayata chunaya. Yes, a kalneek. Ja, ich kinachaya. Ja, ich kinach. Gut, nach saksie kutua at uhan. Gut, saksie nache kutua at. Atachayatsa. Ja, nande. Ja, nande. Konaye kutua she. Siyate henne ye kautua ak. Siyate henne ye an kututriyech. Weka wawe. Ja, kutsnu ja ak. Ja, ik kat awa at. Weka wawe. Akata pusikatsiye. Hasiyete henne yaha khunche. Ya deshitan. Ya dakak ye adach yate. Chucha kutach aye hasyate. Siyete hen. Ya nahu aye yate. Kaya aksaye. Shaadaaxʼ aye yate. Ya dakka. Aya ata tukhatan ke aya. Has chucha kutach aye stiye. Has tu in ke ya wustach wustaken. Ye aya ta tukhatan ke nuch. Achya ikata kawdiya. Uhan to. Chaye aya. Panak yashkashnik.
Okay. Milchi shuhan. Ya yidat chadasadat itu wasagu dat yukatutla atkiye aktu wasagu kagaktu ak chitlingit inach dach ashkashnigia kutzitiyak kechosaku we audio ko achot adate ye jechone ye awe ko ach yak gwashisatin aguksa yak ye ayah yach shutan yashkashnik ye ayah yach shutan ya eqachosaku huche ayah yata Qnachawe khoach qneaya yuqayatang chakut recording aya hasawligich wan qanin saya kaltgeinach yuqaywatan Shaadaaxʼ wan qanin qneya satk yuqatan su Kedena we qoa skawlnigen klingit qinach joyach tu yake do yuqatan gewe wutu akhriya yiki ilchish Asa yituj qoa
Alla shuka are you just audio would Achiawa Ḳák'w Chwaak Kakshahidi just one grenins ya you katangi ka Tléixʼ ya an taide Chwaach agawe Kakshahít Nika
Okay. Ḥaqtiq sani helwasawu tiqwa. Gulchish kaishi.
Kalneek.
Ah.
Shaadaaxʼ ha'in kawanik we sayi nahuwu daat. Nahuwu du Tléixʼ sayi David Hammond yewutian ya hayi hate.
Oh, okay.
David Hammond yewutian David Hammond dot yewutian Marsh Lake Yahayi 1923.
Okay. Sheesh. Yewe adatyuq tuwatangan. Ya Shaadaaxʼ wanaqsawe chishukusaku aya yanq ya angun. Kawit atudaqqa. Ye awe chichak awe chitlainaxawi yaltakat yallangit. Ya an qallaqu qa atlain Taqte hasu lagas. Taqte hasu sidaq. Hel hasawasku wasat qone. Ya qone qa yallangit anitsu qone aya yanaltiki. Hasitawasaku ya elhini. Ayaxi hasuti. Kaidihina ya qalqawu qanna kawanik. Ya qanaq atidaqawe ohan ya Ḥák'w. Gwell hastsewe deishitan. Deishu hitewe wududliach chak. Hechasakukuk saqo atleinawe qutziti. Achawe achtu yakiyesh kalnegi yawe khaakhi. Yat atsu yadaklawedi. Sit tayiqawe hasutlahash. Atlein qa'u hastsu hastitu asaku. Ichilqat qa'u. Qultaq qanaq aya hasuat chak. Naqa jilqat shanaqawe iq hasuat. Ya akhlil kohas. Ya akhladu ish hasawe daklawedi. Kleinach shakakuni yudisagan. Hu owe wishgate haswutuaat. Ya angun qu qajilqat qu. Ya wecho shakakuni ya waqa. Uhana ya isit tayich awe kawdujixít. Achawe jilqate wutuaat chak. Ye awe chishuku at yashkalnika tuyeti. Wan qanins angun. Tekatuhan. Deislin dachawe uhan chak. Deislin khechat wuti. Ye wecho uhan aya angun dachawe chuchak. Ya kwal tekatuhan ikki dachawe. Qanach chuchak aya. Gulchish. Tléixʼ ʼéidáx.
Ne.
Waji
we daklawedi dachnach sha awastiqa her sister.
Huitsech.
We Tuyanaka.
Huitsech.
Huitsech. Kuashi, the song. All the time. Nooch, what song were they singing?
Yet a day to a tongue too. Ye away for dach she away has a couch she wake out. Has your couch the hook. Way, ya he. Way, ya he. Ah, iya he, aha, iya he, yaha. Akatsu awashitsu would do. Ye awecho dach akutzati. Just the got take talk sure he, a dati chitunean. Ya kwan kat kwan has to shagun sketniki. Akawe wutua yan ye di hasu a hain so ya at she kadaklawe did so ye hoji. Hey, aha, ahi, aha, hey, ha. 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 Kadach ya kutzati we yuchatang. Dak ya shetzak we de ya ke he ha itcha. Ayach ka shetzak we de ya ke he ha. Ye awech achin dak shawidi ayich usatian. Gwashi saku ya shakshani. Shakshani wa qanachawe awshkuken hawe ha yuchatangi ha kusti. Du klar away yan ye di. Woosh has with the sha. Du klar ye ya wakayan. Yan ye di atshi away. Ha. Khata ya khata. Ya awach wa achdaklawi di ayich wasatiyan. Ako yako away yan ye di. Kita ya hasu wahin. Daklawi di tso. Nanya ayitso. Ha. Qanakhayu at kawa harsh the kat uhan. Ida telkadain wutus a kukudach so it's the katway nach sati But qanakhayu chuchak shugu hasusatian. Hech was a kuka Just a daat ye jechwani. Ya hakusti kahayu katangi. Ye awe kunchich. Wasa yi tu uchidat.
We Ḳák'w kalneek Shaadaaxʼ.
Judecha.
ʼéidáx. He sounded a lot older than he did when he did the first one. When I heard that story, I started to draw the picture of it, when they were climbing up that tree like a ladder, and they had those lit torches, and they were saying that the tide was coming in, and then the people were sitting down on the tops of the houses listening. It's really a vivid picture when you showed that.
Yeah. Okay. A little bit of history on this project, and there's still a few things I caught that I'll probably go in and maybe adjust. I found the audio for this thanks to Zach Jones, who worked for Sealaska Heritage Institute, and going Well, it goes back to Constance Nash and Gillian Story, who recorded this with Shaadaaxʼ. They then turned their collections over to Nora and Richard Dowenhauer, who worked on it. And then they, in turn, digitized their collection, Ťák'w, and turned a copy over to UAS and went to Tléixʼ Heritage Institute. Then they did a project, Tléixʼ Heritage Institute, where they paid Kingisti and Paneoti and probably others to just listen to the collection and write notes about what they heard. Because of that, we have the Dowenhauer Collection Finding Guide. So you can go through and start entering stuff. And I think I just looked for Basket Bay. And then I found 2 different versions, and they said, this one might be the one in Hashuka, but it might be this other one. So the first one I started listening to, I was like, no, that's not it. I can just look at the book and then listen to it. Second one, I was like, that's it. There it is. Yuha'ani ayu. As soon as I heard that twice, it's like, that's it. That's the one. So then I went through and I started saying, well, maybe I'll just retype this so we could do a scrolling thing. Because in a Hashuka, you get the Tlingit on one page and the English on the other, and it doesn't always line up real easy. And I like to be able to see it right away. And then I caught a few things. I was like, oh, that wasn't written down. So I wrote it down. Then as I went through, I was like, well, I got to retranslate some of this so that it lines up. And then he said, Yeoe Yanshu Atan Yata, or something like that. Like this, how this one ends. And I was like, wait a minute. That's not in there at all. And then all of a sudden it just moves to this other story. And I always thought, boy, he sure makes a twist in this story kind of fast. So they're actually 2 different but related stories of Ḳák'w history, which then goes back to his father's people, the Ḳák'w. We asked Cyril George is also Ḳák'w. We asked him to tell a longer version of this story, and he did for us. But he was also hesitant because he said, well, it's my father's people's story. But then I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad that Shaadaaxʼ did. So that's kind of the history of how we got to here. And then I was like, oh, well, we got to look at this in class then, because it gives us something fun to listen to. Then I made a mistake, and I showed you the wrong thing. But maybe that was okay, because then you just had to listen to the Shenget and look at this weird Google shit. But then, luckily, I saw the chat, and somebody told me. Other thoughts, questions, reflections?
I heard you talking about something and it caught my attention. Now, did I hear you right? Did you say Shakakuni or did you say Shatsukuni?
I think I know there's 2 names, Shakuni and Shakakuni. I usually say Shakakuni.
Can I play something for you guys on that regards? Tell me if I'm hearing this right. Okay. am I hearing kuni as in like you said shakakuni and then there's shakuni? Is that the same kuni?
It's the same kun, yeah. And then kun tla is another one. So dasawi kun ko atletcha chenach yisakuge.
Flicker.
Yeah, away. So it's a flicker. It's a little woodpecker, and it's claimed by the Tléixʼ. So they have a few names with kun in there. Kun tla, shakuni, shakakuni. So the I pops up at the end just as a relational suffix to say it's like a flicker on the mountain or mountain flicker.
For the longest time, I thought he was saying shakakuni until I realized he must have been saying shatsakuni, huh?
Yeah, that one sounds certainly like a tsa or a tsu that's in there. The songs are sometimes hard to hear, especially if they're really jamming out on that drum and the microphone's close to the drum. Then it gets really sometimes hard to. I had some folks who was like, "Could you tell me what's on this tape?" And it just sounds like they put a tape in front of the loudest drummers in the world in the smallest room. And boy, I just blasted my ears up. But sometimes if I put headphones on and really listen to it 10,000 times, I can catch most of what they're saying. But sheesh. Other thoughts, questions, reflections?
Ahwe, Yash Kauflanik reminded me of Donna Walk telling the story of above Yik and Dai Situ, the glacier, and Chilkoot traveling.
Okay. Yeah, I love they just get me thinking about what I said before I played the recording was I had read this a whole bunch of times, including one time I was driving with some friends from Whitehorse to Skagway, and I just read it out loud, and it was actually kind of emotional because we were going near a route where our ancestors would have gone, and just thinking about the migrations and the amount of knowledge that's been passed along. So and then found the audio to it and was really excited, and then also was excited to realize that it was two different stories, and that they mashed them together, which is cool too, because for a long time I had read them and thought, it just seems like there's a break in here somewhere, like it just takes a different direction, where some of them are actually about Ḳák'w, which is a bay with a lot of karsts in it and a lot of really interesting sort of landmarks. And then about this big migration, which is every clan has big migration stories. So, okay.
There was a word in the first story. It sounded like a kukastich. And I think I looked over in time to see it said there would be. And it reminded me a lot of the verb form kukakasti, like let it be. And I was kind of curious about that, I guess. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yes, kukastich. So if we sort of so we see aya yakis kletiniqa aya kukastich. So there's a couple of things, and I'm still trying to put together some materials to talk about the perfective habituals. But basically, you have a perfective marker in there that sure seems like it disappears a lot, and so that's just how it is. I'm not exactly sure. I'll probably find some Zeush or Ḳák'w who have probably written great things about that. But I know you have to have whatever the conjugation type is, that prefix must pop up. So that's where you get natich, because that's a na conjugation. To exist or to be born is qa conjugation. Really important to remember. So you could say You could say ye koti, and that's a high toned ye. But then if you switch it to yach, it should be yach kukati. Yach kukati, it will be that, like that. But if you're going to say it will exist, you should be saying ye as a low tone, kukwasti, because it's qa conjugation. So when you have, when you move something into this habitual form, like it always happens, it must have the conjugation prefix in there, and then it'll end with a ch. So you get kukastich. It always exists. But if you look at these stories, though, that does not always mean always exists. It kind of also means it used to always be that way, but you don't have to put this decessive marker on there. That's another thing I don't fully understand. They use it all the time, which is a habitual thing to do, to talk about a past tense thing. Because you could say, you could say that, and that is saying it used to always be that way, but it's not anymore. But I think there's a bit of a sliding difference between always is that way and was that way at that time, or was always that way at that time.
Is there like not some sort of I feel like they weren't always what, like he's talking, is it like every time they did that it was that way, or something like that?
Yeah, because you could also translate that as there were always these tide watchers. And we know it's a noun because you get shetini over here, which is nouning that verb. So there's another form. So if you take this habitual form of something, if you put ch in front of it, and then a contracted Tléixʼ, contracted all the way down to the letter L, you copy this form, teach, you add an I at the end, or it could be a U, and you get and that is before it existed. Because the negative, so if you said teach, that negative form of the habitual means it doesn't exist yet. It hasn't done that yet. So if you get any of those things, I haven't slept yet, I didn't eat it yet, those should be negative habituals, which is always really interesting to me. Because you've got them here too, uhanch.
I remember Dick Downhauer saying, I always go to the show sometimes. And he said, and in Tlingit it makes perfect sense. So I'm not sure which verb modes those are.
Sometimes you'll hear the nooch pop up in that. Like Walter Soboloff would say, Kini away uhan. Akoa. An akutan. Or say one kanins. An akitan. You had to a sock nooch. He says, we are Kini, but sometimes people always call us. So the one kanins and then putting nooch after the verb is something you'll catch in Tlingit. That seems.
I like to hear that in stories because I know what it means.
Right. Yeah. Which is fun because then you could just say it in English. Sometimes it's always that way. I think we just did that today. Like Huzuhu said the store was busy or crazy or something, and I said, or no, it was bad. The store was bad. Sometimes it's always that way. So it's a good Tlingit phrase for construction. Oh, I saw your note. That might be it. Is that in the 0, maybe the perfective is there, and then in others, the conjugation prefix just gobbles it up.
Could you, on page 1, the third line from the bottom, Could you explain that verb yande yak leinen ayu? Like, is that like it is going to tidal flat up? Or
I think this is what we call it. I was actually just looking at this the other day with something else. And I think it's a contingent form, which was saying when this thing used to happen, and then he would come up to this other thing. So I'm not exactly sure. I know you probably have. I would guess that the tide's coming up, so it's probably g conjugation. So that's probably what the K is doing, because the g conjugation prefix pops up. Then you've got this q mode. It gets a little tricky because you can have something plus q. You can have g and q, na and q and q, zero and q. And then you get this decessive thing, right, which just kind of pops up. But Ḳák'w, coming back to this Ḳák'w relationship, I was going through a phrase of his that I had written down years ago after he spoke to us. And I think it was something like that. And I was like, what? And so, but it has to do with like when this thing used to happen, then you set it up to, it leads up to another verb. Again, when we start moving time and sequencing around, it does get kind of tricky. But usually when you see something like this, it starts to look like a future thing. And then this would be lla for something to melt or the tide to go out. But when you close it, it changes to llé. So you get llēnin. Because he's got other ones in here that follow this same pattern.
why? So the verb shla, it's going out. Da, it's rising. And I found ayakawa shla, the tide changed.
Oh yeah.
But I couldn't figure out why shla.
Yeah, because you've got yande, which is towards the shore. So usually you're hearing da da. The tide came up. So it went upland and it usually flows up da, melts out lla. So I don't I don't know why the tide would go out and then, because that verb should be going out, but then the yande is on there as well. And that could be why he's saying the land was really strange. So maybe when the tide goes out, it's actually coming up into this area, because it's full of all these underground caverns, like a karst is what they call them. And so maybe that's what he's talking about. And so because the tide was so strange here, they had to have people way out, because even when the tide goes out, it's going to flood. People were living underneath the land. Like that's what he keeps saying in this kalneek as well. So then even like grammatically it's strange and conceptually it's strange, because you're like, tide go out but come in? Okay. That must be why my boat got high and dry the other day.
Kakini Tléixʼ kai askatu de hini yinde ani, like 2 miles up. It goes under where that cavern's at.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, and so there's probably like a bunch. It's one of those things where like there's a bunch of geographical knowledge in here too. Like if you've never been to Basket Bay and don't know about it, then you're probably like, what? But then the combination of knowing the language, knowing the culture, knowing the land, boom, it's probably like, oh yeah, this really unpredictable tidal action in that particular place. Okay.
What's the way on us Tléixʼ kalneek do on us way Shaadaaxʼ ka classical Tléixʼ Lonnie Houston kalneek on us too. It's not a yaw.
It's a raft.
What kind of? I mean, it was like what kind of raft though? I mean, I don't know if you know, but I've never seen what kind of raft it is. Or I wondered what it was made of, I guess.
What I would guess, so that's a really good question. But then let's look at the verb. So this wududlis it. So what we're gonna do now is do a little bit of verb looking around. So we'll go to the old verb dictionary. We're gonna look up it and see what we could find. So we'll go down to the verbs, the S apostrophe, and we go down and we get eat, to tie together by wrapping rope, etc., around. And then we'll go, let me just pop the chat open so I got it. So we'll go and we'll look up khanats as well, because there's an interesting word. So we're going to go look up tie together and just try and get a better idea of this verb, see what it could be doing, because there's a bunch of different tying verbs as well. Like tying of shoes, tying something, wrapping something around. There's 3 different ways to talk about tying things up that I know of. So we get tie something in a bow, shaqwan. So if we look at that, we know that's a 0 conjugation verb because that's the command form and there's nothing there. We go straight to the classifier. Qashqwan, I'm going to tie it into a bow. We get dukh, would do a dukh. That one is also 0 because it's perfective, closed, short and high. So like just sort of this whole set of rules start to just sort of form in your mind so you can look at that. So that would be like someone getting out of the shower, wrapping a towel around themselves. Then you could put ka in front of it, tying the strings and knots. Tléixʼ, a kaduch. So then you get tléixʼ, which are strings as opposed to ropes. Yu'at shka a kawdujixít. Tied an apron around herself. There's that shka, so around the self. Clean, tie your hair into a bunch. Again, 0 conjugation, we could see it. Same with this one. Tie in a bow. Chin, 0. These are all turning out to be zeros. We could just put these things together. Oh, okay. Amazon is where that the printed version currently is. Let's see. Chin, same thing. Sa'ach, so this is to tie something into a bundle. It has to do with wrapping something around. Again, 0. Kasiyi. A kausiyi. That one's hard to tell. So this is to loosely tie together something. Khanats wududlis, to tie something by wrapping rope around. So the idea that I get is you put logs together and you start wrapping them together. That's what I think of with the khanas. It's not like, especially if you look at this story, I don't think they stopped to make this finely crafted water vessel. I think you make some rafts and you're just wrapping these things together. That's what I would think. Let's see. Tie the hands, so tie up the mouth. The one really has to do with, I think, a tight individual wrapping, like especially one sort of area, like the spear that ties up the arms of the seal, that has this on there. Also works well for wrapping up a present. But the tz'it verb works well for bandaging like a broken limb. So it has to do with maybe a longer, consistent strand of wrapping. Okay. Welcome to Cheesh. So, I think what we'll do next week is we'll take a closer look at this shkachnik. So, if you look on our class webpage, klinkitlanguage.com, learning Tlingit, advanced Tlingit, you'll find the audio. You can download this audio, listen to it again. You'll find the sheet where you can look at the Tlingit and the English in the updated form. Then we're going to sort of just pull apart some of the sentences just to see what's going on and kind of do a bit of, sometimes we're always going from English to Tlingit, so we're going to go Tlingit to English and just see if we can see what's going on. There's a whole bunch of fourth person motion verbs, other fun stuff that's going on. So spend the weekend looking closely at this story, download the PDF, and just circle some things that you want to talk about, and we'll start class with that. If you have any additional migrations that you want to talk about on Monday, let's start by just talking about migrations a little bit. Even if you can just put together 10 or so sentences about migrations. And then we'll move back into Ḳák'w. Then we'll move back into some of the grammar stuff that we've been talking about. And as always, bring any questions you got. Sheesh. Anything before we go?
For people in the advanced class, the intermediate class is looking to do a Tlingit hike this Saturday, and they were wondering like what times would work for people, and like if they could start an email chain about that.
Okay.
Can they post it in the campfire?
Yeah, I'll mess around with the base camp and see if I can get the groups to communicate. Because I think I got people in advanced and intermediate. And I'm sure there's ways to get the teams to see each other and talk.
Wasn't there some way that you could like in the base camp? I thought there was something about a campfire or something where you could bring together.
Yeah. So I'll try that out. And then I'll also try sending out an email just to the whole gang so that we have this big email thread. And we have each other's email addresses.
The base camp that was for the MOOC, for the short workshop. The long Tlingit name for the short workshop. That base camp is pretty active, and we've invited in more people from other classes. So
that's the ʼéidáx. Okay, I'll put that one in the chat right now, and I'll include it in an email to folks. I probably won't put it on the blog because I'll probably get spammed. Cool. Did you have a thought?
Yeah, the question I was going to ask you when we're doing introductions, I was thinking of, would it be appropriate to say the name that you had in English that was named after somebody else before, like Washington Sai? I was going to use that and I stopped myself because I don't know if it would make sense.
Yeah, sure. Well, you weren't supposed to introduce yourself. You're just supposed to say your name and something you usually don't say in an introduction. But I let it go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would probably say Tléixʼ, and then I'd have to name some football player because that's who I was named after. So, and then a baseball player. So I could say Isai, oh wait, Achsai, oh wait, Hank Aaron.
Hank. Yes.
But yeah, that's a good question. Like that's how I think you would do it. Tléixʼ ʼéidáx achsai. And then, because achsai could mean my name or my namesake.
Aksai.
Yeah. So I could say achsai away Fenton Jacobs Tléixʼ ʻéidáx. But that's interesting because my Tlingit name comes from Fenton Jacobs. So it goes crossing languages. It's pretty fun. Good stuff, gang. Kalneek. Have a great weekend. And your task is to look at the story, find things you want to talk about next week, and come up with a few sentences, maybe 10, if you can, just about some kind of migration. And we'll just start by talking about migrations, sharing our sentences, transition to ḳák'w, and then get back to the verb monsters. Hucha, Kalneek.
Goodness, sheesh.
Sheesh.
Gánaíoch.
Gánaíoch, Johan.
Okay.
Hey, I got your cookies, man. 2 boxes of it.
They're visiting. They ate them all last night. Oh, my old stash.
Dude, my computer keeps on freezing all this whole class because I'm at the captain's choice, so the internet's kind of bad. So I missed what you just said, but I missed what you said a bunch of times today.
Oh,
you were saying something about our introduction, and I don't think I still understand.